Welcome to Backstage at Speaking Your Brand. I'm Diane Diaz, lead speaking coach at Speaking Your Brand. And today I am very excited to bring to you two more of the graduates from our recent Thought Leader Academy. They're going to deliver, one of them is going to deliver 10 minutes of her talk that she worked on in the Thought Leader Academy. That's Kelly Mallery, and I'll introduce you to her in just a moment. And then Kelly Meigs is going to be interviewed by me about her topic, why she's so passionate about it, and the process that she went through. Now, while you're watching this, I just want to make sure you know it does not matter the purpose of your talk, whether you are looking to create a TEDx talk or a TED talk, a keynote talk, a lead generation talk, or a presentation for internal use at your company, any of those things. For any of those purposes, you can use the signature talk framework to create a talk that has more structure, incorporates a framework, and incorporates your personal story that's going to make a deeper connection with your audience to get that outcome that you want. So as you watch Kelly Mallery deliver her talk and you listen to my interview with Kelly Meigs, pay close attention to the idea of how their story came into the talk. And remember, they've got two different purposes for their talk. So it'll be really interesting to see how the different uses can be applied for the signature talk framework. So first, let me introduce the two women that we have with us today. We have Kelly Mallery, who is a lean consultant and engineer. And as I said, Kelly Mallery will be sharing the first 10 minutes of her, 10 minutes of her talk that she worked on in the Thought Leader Academy. And then Kelly Meigs is the VP of Marketing, Strategy, and Planning with Tanner Health. So as I said, instead of sharing her talk, I'm going to interview her on her process and her topic, which I think you'll find fascinating. So let me first welcome to the stage Kelly Mallery. Kelly, the stage is all yours.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Kelly Mallery, and I am really excited to share 10 minutes of my talk, which is all about change wars and why fighting resistance is the wrong battle and what you should do instead. So let's dive into that. First, though, got to do a little bit of nostalgia, right? Anybody remember this? I am a baby of the 80s, and my brother and I, older brother, would play with Transformers all the time. We would play in our backyard and pretend that we were the Transformers. It was so much fun. And in fact, we had a lot of these toys. And this was the reason that I wanted to get into engineering in the first place. I wanted to make toys because these were just so incredible and so fascinating. They really are more than meets the eye, as their phrase says. They change so easily, right? 1 minute, Optimus Prime is a truck, and then the next, he's a robot. And it's incredible that they can change so easy because they're designed to. But when we think about us, unfortunately, we are not Transformers. It is not easy for us to change. Change is really hard. And as a change leader, I support other change leaders to try to make this easy. And we want to make change without feeling, resistance. We want to make positive impact on business financials. We want our changes to be sustained long-term. And as I said, we don't want to feel like we're pushing a boulder uphill. We don't want to feel like every day is a struggle to get things done. Instead, right, you want it to feel like this. You want to feel great and joyful in doing all of your change initiatives with others. And here's what ends up getting in our way, right? We've got a few obstacles. The first one might be there's just so much, I don't even know where to start. And this is probably what that feels and looks like. It might be that you've got leaders who aren't bought in and are like Ricky Gervais here from The Office and not really wanting to support. Or one of my favorites, but we've always done it this way. Why do we have to change? Right? All of these obstacles 100% get in our way of making that positive change. And I want to share a story about how I encountered some of these obstacles. This is my beautiful younger stepdaughter, Claire. And one day, I came home from work, typical day at work, and I'm really excited. It's the end of the week. I'm like, I'm going to just relax, put my stuff down, maybe grab a glass of wine, and just be with my family for the evening and not worry about anything. And I walk into my house, into the kitchen, and my kitchen counter is replaced with a massive science lab where Claire has a slew of experiments set up with packing peanuts, the packing peanuts that are dissolvable in water. And I immediately start thinking, here we go. I've talked to her 1,000 times about this. The kitchen needs to be clean so that we can make dinner. Why won't she just listen to me? Why can't she change this habit? What am I doing wrong? Does she not respect me? And on my internal dialogue starts going. And as this happens, I can feel my blood pressure rising. And it's like the cartoon of steam coming out of my ears. That's how that felt. It was so infuriating. And I grabbed my husband and I said, hey, we really got to deal with this. What can we do? I'm just so frustrated that she's just not doing what we're asking of her. And he so kindly and gently put his hand on my shoulder and said, babe, she's only 9. What do you expect? And in that moment, I realized that I was trying to push her into change. And I was not helping, right? I realized in that moment that the real problem with change initiatives, it's us, right? The call is coming from inside the house. It was on me. I needed to change my approach to help her change. And this is true in work too. We need to change how we do this to help others change. Now, I'm an engineer by training, and now as a coach of other leaders and change agents, I really focus on bringing scientific thinking, just a really wonderful engineering skill, into changing our mental patterns for how we see others and how we make change happen. And I can tell you, I've done this over and over. I've seen this over and over in my own experiences and others. And what happens is when we expect others to just change or get on board and not resist, right? We are not seeing them as people. We treat them like things that are in the way of our change. And this makes them want to resist more. And so this experience with leading change at work and home led me to develop this framework, the Transform framework. And we're going to go through each of these quickly. So for F, find your inner voices. This is about understanding those voices that happen in your mind and when they come up. And an example, a client, Annika Hines, who graciously allowed me to share a little bit of her story. She works at a global company where part of her job is to solve problems with internal invoicing, which means that people external from her have to change their decisions and habits to come together to a solution. Sound familiar? And during this portion of our Transform framework, she realized that she had a big judge. She was judging the other people that she was working with a lot. And this was a quote from her, "I'm seeing the judge all over." And then once you find the voices, we can move into observing and practicing. So we observe that impact of that voice on those around you and the change you're trying to make, and observe the impact on you. And then we'll practice deliberately to quiet these voices. For Annika, right, after doing this work for a few weeks, she saw change not only at work, but at home with her son, right? Before, she was pushing him to do his homework and he was avoiding her. And she was approaching him with her judge mode. And instead of inviting the change, he was responding in kind and making it even harder. So after we observe and practice, we can then reframe and reclaim. So we reframe that resistance and hurdles as opportunities to learn more about the other person, ourself, and what will help make the change successful. For Annika, instead of her mind ruling her, she learned to reframe where she now feels in control of her mind and herself, and thereby she feels more connected to others so she can make that positive change much more effectively. And then the last thing is we marvel at how much better this feels for you, and in turn, how much better you're helping others with change. And look at that new impact you have and the results. And for Annika, She noticed the impact, and she was saying this helps her take action despite fear and uncertainty. And she now has a new language for emotions, and it's a whole new world and life-changing. So I'd ask you, imagine if you were able to transform the way that you look at change in others and transform yourself in the process. Imagine if change could feel easy. It is possible. I've seen it. I've experienced it. You can make positive change and feel joy and ease. And Optimus even says all sentient beings have the capacity for change. So thank you.
Oh my goodness. That was fantastic. How did that feel, Kelly?
It felt really good once I got moving.
Yeah. No, and I love the transformer thing, which we'll talk about more in a moment. So everybody who's watching, stick around for our roundtable discussion after this, where we'll talk about some of the ins and outs of both Kellys working on their talk and their time in the Thought Leader Academy. For now, though, I want to talk to Kelly Meigs. So Kelly, let's talk a little bit about your experience working on this talk. Now, you came to this process not with the goal to do a keynote talk or a lead generation talk or a TED talk or any of those things. Your presentation, we'll call it, it was going to be strictly internal. And so everyone who's watching, that's why Kelly is not sharing her talk, because it's an internal piece for her work that she does. But I do want to talk a little bit about your topic. And so tell us a little bit about your topic and why you're so passionate about it. And I think so many people, women watching this, are going to relate to this.
Hi, Diane, thanks for having me on.
Yes.
This time last year, I was having a lot of really intense symptoms related to menopause. I was sleeping about 2 hours a night. Felt like I was under an enormous amount of stress. And I felt like this is really a confusing time in my life. And so I started doing a lot of research into menopause and found that there are many, many, many women out there who are suffering through this stage in their life. And there's not a lot of support for women at this age. Like there's tons of support for women who are ready to have babies or trying to have babies. But a lot of women my age, I'm in my 50s, struggles during this time of life because of menopause can cause so many just random symptoms. And so this sort of became my passion project because I felt like there wasn't a lot of local resources for women who were struggling with these symptoms, or also a lot of just knowledge about what women go through at this age. And so once I started doing a lot of research, I developed a presentation with your help for internal audiences only. And I'm not opposed to taking my presentation out in the world, but that wasn't my original intent.
Yes. And I'm glad you shared that because, I think people often say to me when I'm talking about the Thought Leader Academy, oh, no. I don't want to be a speaker. I'm not a speaker. And then I find out they do internal presentations. Maybe they have a team that they're leading and they're giving, doing meetings with them. And I always say, well, then you are a speaker, because if you ever share with a group in any way, shape, or form, you are a speaker. And so your academy, right, to work on this internal piece. And like you said, maybe someday you'll take it on the road, but really the purpose now is to use as an internal piece of content. But even that internal piece of content has goals.
It does.
Right? And so getting the audience on board with the message means that the message has to be delivered in a certain way. And so I know when you came in with this idea, and of course, and for everybody watching, just know that my working with Kelly Meigs was almost like a therapy session for the both of us, because I 139,000% related to what Kelly was talking about, because I too am in my 50s. I've experienced and still experience all of the things that happen to women at this age. And I can relate to the story of not being able to find the resources that you need. And so it was very much a personal thing for me as well, which was nice. But coming into the Thought Leader Academy with sort of the idea for your talk, and you came in with already a slide deck created. And so what we did, just for a little behind the scenes, is we took what you already had and sort of reoriented it using the Signature Talk Framework canvas and then incorporated more story. And so talk to us a little bit about how we incorporated personal story into this and how you felt about that in the, like, going through the process of that. And then sharing it in our group call, you shared a little bit about that as well.
So I had created this presentation last summer, and it is chock full of tons of data, tons of resources, and all through sort of my career, even back to college, I would be the person that would create the entire presentation as long as I didn't have to be the one to give the presentation. It didn't matter how much work it was. I'm that person. And so in my career, that's been a big stumbling block, is to feel comfortable with presentations. And it has always been the way I thought would be, don't get too personal. Like, don't share too much about your personal feelings or story or struggles. You want to be professional. Data's better. You should just keep it clean. And so what I really loved about this experience is when you and I talked, I was able to tell my personal story, which is the story of many, many women our age. And if you are not yet our age, it is super fun. And so, I feel like that my presentation is so much better now, because it wouldn't leave somebody sitting there saying, why is she the one presenting on this? Like, why is this her passion? And that was what I really loved about it, was because I was able to weave my passion, this is my passion project, into my talk in a more personal way than the way I had originally.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And it's such a good message, because I come from a corporate background myself, and I know as I've been doing this work and even just creating talks for myself, I have to always be mindful, because I think in the corporate space, we're used to keeping it facts and figures, right? And we know that we can do that really well. We do that in our sleep. But then for myself, becoming more mindful of the fact that my story has to be part of it, and then seeing the power that personal story has in illustrating and demonstrating for the audience the topic you're talking about, why you care about it, why they should care about it, and sort of bringing out that universal message, because that's your personal story. But how many women are going to identify with that? So many women, right? And it adds more of a deeper connection to the content beyond just the facts and figures. And so for everybody watching this, Kelly's presentation is very fact and figure heavy, because it's to an audience in that industry, right? And so it needs that, but it still includes story. And we made sure that it included story, because these are real women going through this, right? And so there needs to be that, not only Kelly's personal connection to the content, but also, how does this connect to actual human women, right? Living and walking around, right? And so we made sure that the stories came through clearly, so that it gave some grounding of the data in real people's lives and experiences.
That's what I loved about doing it this way, because it's one thing to say 40% of women experience, this, that, or the other. But when you add, like, this is my personal story. And when you really started delving into how to tell that story related to the data. So data is really important when you're speaking to medical professionals. They want to know the science behind what they do. And I'm sure, Kelly, your field is very much the same way. It can't all be about the story. It has to be also based in fact. But I felt like it was really fun to pair both things, because it gave you a minute to switch gears between just straight up data and gave a minute to pause for the listener to pause and reflect on what you're talking about, rather than data slide after slide after slide.
Yes. And we were also able to work a little bit of humor in there as well, right? So we found some ways to add, because if we're being real, and Kelly, you can attest to this as well, you have to laugh sometimes when you're going through these things to keep from crying, because it's we suffer a lot. So, but we found some ways to work humor in there, because again, to that point of balancing out all the data to make it more relatable to the audience, right?
Right. And it kind of goes back to Kelly's presentation too, how she talked about I became an engineer because I wanted to know how to make those toys. I mean, I don't know that you said that before in our presentations to each other, but that is a fantastic way to tie back into, makes it you more relatable and more authentic. And I just had never really tried to do that with my presentations. I try to be very business-like and very factual. And so it was fun to kind of step away from that and bring more of my personality into my talk.
Yes, I love that. And that's a great observation about Kelly Mallory's talk as well. She did do that. And this is what we talk about in the Thought Leader Academy and on Speaking Your Brand, called getting stuck in the expert trap, right? We get stuck in the expert trap, and then we just talk facts and figures, data, information, teaching, training. And that's where we get stuck. And then it doesn't have as big an impact. And then when we start to incorporate our personal story into it, not only I feel, are we more connected to the message? I mean, I know personally for me, that's what happens for my talks, but also I think the audience is more connected to it too, because now they see why you care so much about it.
Yeah. I think so too. And one way I was struggling with my presentation is I would be presenting a lot of medical data to medical professionals. So I think tying it back to like the patient and the person is more than just a bunch of medical facts and figures. There are people that are related to what I'm talking about.
Yes. And, any business cares about, or should, but your business definitely does care about the consumer, in this case, the patient. And so making that connection does make it draws a clearer line between what you're talking about and that end outcome.
Yes, it really connects sort of to our purpose, which is to take care of all people at all ages of their lives. So connecting it to, not only do I work in healthcare marketing, I'm a patient myself. And so, everyone is multidimensional.
Absolutely. And so if you're watching this and you're someone in corporate, you're a woman in corporate, and you're doing presentations and you think there's no place for your story, or you're not sure how to do that, just consider, of course, the Thought Leader Academy, but think about how you can take that data, but balance it out with stories, right? To make that personal connection. Because again, so many times women have said to me, oh no, I'm not a speaker, I don't need to create a talk. Well, it turns out you actually still need to get the audience on your side, even if you're presenting to your internal team. So just keep that in mind. Now let's talk a little bit now about, first of all, thank you, Kelly Meigs, for sharing your story with us and for sharing your personal connection to this content. And I think also, I just want to thank you for being vulnerable enough to share that, because I know there is still a big stigma around talking about this topic. And I think we should all be shouting it from the rooftops so that future generations of young women do not have to come to this by surprise the way the rest of us have, where we just don't know what's happening to us. So let's all start talking openly about it. So thank you for being that voice and starting to get that message out there, even internally, because it needs to be talked about in a bigger way, I feel.
Thanks.
So let's talk a little bit now, and this is for both of you, about the process and sort of being in the Thought Leader Academy. And so I'll start with you, Kelly Mallory. What were your expectations coming into the Thought Leader Academy, and how did it sort of align? And was there anything surprising?
So when I came in, I had heard about this from another person in my network who had gone through, who I admire a lot. And I was like, okay, I think, I've been speaking for a couple of years, but I had noticed that I hadn't progressed much. Like I've done, the breakout session, and I had one keynote and I felt pretty good about it, but I didn't see any more traction. So I was really looking for, okay, what do I need to do to really elevate my speaking game? And I was hoping to come out with at least a few tips and ideas and a structure for a larger talk, but I got so much more than that. And what I really gained that was different than my expectation was the sheer amount of confidence I have to go out and be like, I'm a speaker, book me. And it feels awesome, and just confidence in my story as well and how to share it.
Oh, that warms my heart to hear that. The confidence to go out and say, I'm a speaker, book me. Because I think that is half the battle sometimes. It's like that imposter syndrome of thinking we're actually not a speaker and why me and why would they book me and I don't belong here. And so I'm glad that that is one of the things that came from that. So yay. And Kelly Meigs, what about you? What was your expectation and any surprising outcomes?
Well, at first, when we started talking about our signature talk, I thought, well, I don't really want to take my show on the road. I don't feel like a TED Talk is kind of my future or my journey. But I did recognize that I do so many presentations for so many varieties of different initiatives, that being more confident and having a better framework for my presentations is so beneficial, because as you know, in business, you have this much time to get in front of somebody and sell your idea. And having more confidence and having this framework where you build your presentation in a very organized kind of way was super beneficial in how to move forward in with confidence and with ease. And I'm a graphic designer by training. And so I never felt like my presentations didn't look good. I just felt like I didn't always portray enough passion or maybe even organize my thoughts in a way that made sense to people. So this is really great training for that. So you don't have to take it on the road. This can be something just to gain more confidence in what you already do in your day-to-day life.
Oh, that's a great point. Yes. And so, that's why I like to say, no matter the purpose of your talk, even if you're just going to be interviewed for, a 5-minute segment on television, right? You can still use this signature talk framework, the process and the sort of the framework to create what your talking points are and still walk the audience down a path to some sort of a call to action. And I use the term call to action loosely because it doesn't have to be like buy my XYZ product. It could just be, so think about this. I'm challenging you to think about this differently, right? So having that structure makes the message more effective. And so you can really apply the signature talk framework structure to any content. It could be presentations. It could also be content you're sharing on a blog or, who knows where, videos you're creating for, your own LinkedIn lives or your own, whatever you're doing, YouTube or whatever. So I'm glad that you shared that because it really does illustrate the flexibility of the framework and how it can be applied in different ways. And so let me ask you both, what was it like sharing your talks inside the Thought Leader Academy with the rest of the women in there? I'll start with you, Kelly Mallery.
It was wonderful because if we didn't do that, I would probably have wanted to throw up coming into this. and like, even I've done speaking. So like, I always kind of feel like that though, before getting up there and starting, but the container of being in this group of women who were going through the same thing and being able to share it with them. I loved the safety that I felt doing it. And I also valued so deeply all of the feedback and the opinion of this group after going through this with everybody for several weeks.
Yes, the feedback's been amazing. Everybody has been supportive of one another. And what about you, Kelly Meigs?
What I loved about it is everybody had a very unique journey and a very unique reason why they were doing this. And I found so many of the stories to be very, very inspirational. And, I think that no matter, like Kelly said, no matter how many times you've spoken, you may always be nervous and you may always be very tense. You may feel like you've got to throw up. It may be that it's just, sometimes people may feel like it's a perfectly easy thing to do. I don't think I'll ever be that person, but I feel like this gives you a lot of confidence that at least you are prepared and you have practiced and your presentation is perfect when you do decide you want to speak in front of a group. And the stories that some of the women had in our group, they were so impactful and just so touching. I got something out of every single time we got together.
Yes. Yeah. That's such great points because I think, I think that's the lovely part of the group element of it is that group dynamic that it takes on. And then it's not just myself and Carol supporting you all, but it's also the other women. And sometimes, frankly, the other participants in the group will give feedback that even sometimes Carol and I didn't see, because they are coming from a different perspective, which is nice because you've got this sort of built-in sounding board for your ideas and your message and your talk. And so what was it like in the VIP day? I know, well, I'll just start with you, Kelly Meigs. You came into it already with this talk that you wanted to, or this presentation you wanted to work on. So was it surprising, the process, or what was that like?
Well, I at first didn't know really what to expect, since I already had a pretty good framework for my, and I don't want to use framework because that's what we sort of worked on my presentation, but I sort of had the outline and the slides already prepared. But I knew that it could be a very rambling presentation with a lot of facts and figures. And you and I talked, I think we met for about an hour about the presentation and putting a framework to sort of my call to action. And one of the things I loved about that most is I don't tend to give people who listen to my presentation time to think about each point. And that was some great advice that you gave. And it really helped us formulate the end part of my presentation in a much better way than I already had it, because it gave people a minute to go, let's think about what she's saying or what she's asking at each step of the way. And we came up with the word care as our framework, which ties very nicely to our tagline and what we do at Tanner. And so I loved the idea of that, because it really collects your thoughts into a framework of communication.
Yes. And I thought the care was such a lovely way to package up your message and really, of course, connect to the message of Tanner and connect to the care of just people, right? And women, right? So it really is so fitting for what you're going to be talking about. And then for you, Kelly Mallery, you came into the Thought Leader Academy, and I can't even remember how we sort of stumbled upon your transformer thing, but so talk to me about that. What was that like?
I kind of remember how that happened.
Okay, so tell me.
I think we were talking about how I was an engineer, and my idea was all about what I've been practicing with people, which is, right, I do scientific thinking coaching, and so that with the mental patterns. And so we talked about, how did you get into engineering? And applied that thinking here. And it took me, I think we were about to move on to another topic. And then I was like, oh, wait, I remember I wanted to make toys. And then that led to this story about my brother and I playing and watching a lot of Transformers. And then that was it.
So good.
Yeah. And then we were off to the races with it led. So, if you're watching this, even if you come with no clear idea of what is the framework, what is the exact message, that is okay, because and I said this at the beginning of everybody's VIP day, is that you're going to be doing a lot of talking, and it's going to seem like you're doing too much talking, but you can't be doing too much talking. And it's through all that talking. And then often me saying, yes, but tell me your story. But why did you care? But why did you want to do that? But why were you interested in that? And we just keep going deep, deep, deep. And then we stumble upon this thing, right? And then that's sort of where we stumbled on that you wanted to make toys and the Transformers. And then before you know it, we had the framework, we had the idea, we had some audience engagement, we had some activities, we had some props even that you're going to use. So, I mean, there's so many fun things that you can incorporate from you may not even realize that your childhood comes back to all of this, but it does. So I was excited that we were able to incorporate that, because it's such a fun way to demonstrate the points, but also make it really fun for the audience and for you, frankly.
Yeah.
I love it, Kelly. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's so fun. I would love to see you actually on stage delivering it. So if you ever do deliver it, then record it and let us see that. And so with that, then I want to ask, what is next for each of you? Kelly, Mallery, I know that you have something coming up. What is next as a speaker and thought leader for you?
I do. So I will be at Con for all of my scientific thinking nerds out there. On April 1st, I am opening with the opening keynote, and it's not going to be exactly the same as this, but there will be Transformers. And
Yay!
we'll have a similar vibe. So I'm really, and by then I will have my toy, because I intend to have a toy on stage with me. So
okay, so you make sure to film that, and we want to see it somewhere. So great. Okay, and then Kelly Meigs, what's next for you?
We are working through this project internally, and it's very exciting. And so I cannot wait to give this presentation to a multitude of audiences within Tanner. And I'm just so thankful for having the opportunity to do this and really get the presentation to exactly where I want it to be. And so this has been a great experience.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. Well, it's been amazing working with you both, and you've added so much to the entire group. And so thank you for being vulnerable enough to share your stories and to entrust them with us in the Thought Leader Academy, and for sharing them here today with our audience. And so I truly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So for everybody watching and listening, be sure to connect with both Kellys, Kelly Mallery. We have so many Kellys, Kelly Mallery and Kelly Meigs. You can connect with them on LinkedIn. You can stay up to date on everything that they're doing. And if you would like to join us and work on your talk / presentation / speech, whatever purpose that it is that you have for it, Keynote, TEDx, presentation internally, pitch, whatever you're doing, you can join us in the Thought Leader Academy by visiting speakingyourbrand.com/academy. Again, that is speakingyourbrand.com/academy. And until next time, thanks for watching.